بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to Mathabah Institute podcast, part 2 of the most interesting and controversial topic, moonsighting versus calculations. I'm pleased to have Shaykh Omar to my right and Shaykh Yusuf to my left. MashaAllah, Shaykh. How are you doing?
Good. You okay?
How are you doing, Shaykh Omar?
Doing well.
Where are your boxing gloves?
Oh, they're right here.
Oh, you got them?
Keeping them
MashaAllah.
handy.
Somebody came prepared.
Keeping them handy, right?
So I took them off, for this session, and Sheikh Omar has has taken control of them. So the first session was very interesting. We discussed a lot of things, and I asked you a question about, moon calculations and why do we use moon to begin the month. And it was very interesting after that session. I actually went back and I was reading the book by Alexander McBain on Celtic mythology, and he spoke about the origin of the words, and he's basically talking about how different civilizations, they actually share common words. And so one of the words that several civilizations share is actually moon, right? And that's where you get the word month from. It's actually from moon. And if you look in different languages, then they have very similar usage of the word. So for instance, just a quick Google search will also give you this. For instance, the Dutch ma'an, right? Please forgive me if I'm butchering the pronunciation. But German mond, and then you have in Greek men, right? All of them are kind of related to month, and they all have to do with moon. I mean, even in Urdu, you say mahina, which comes from the Persian ma, which means moon, right? So you can see this is something that has existed in all the civilizations. So it's not something that is very unique to the Islamic civilization, but if, all these different civilizations have used moon to determine the beginning of the month. So which kind of leads me to the question that I was thinking about is, we have all these civilizations, and a lot of advancements have been done in technology into, looking into different observational techniques such as astrolabe, and then they would have all these different charts. So do we find classical scholars using calculations to determine the beginning of the month as well, and then using that as a basis of Islamic ruling?
It's a great point. So you know what it is that we won't say that this information was not present in the past. What we actually find is that it was present. The knowledge of this was present, but it wasn't used to determine the beginning of the month. Primarily, this knowledge was used in the past to do astrology, to predict the future, to figure out what's going to happen in our lives. And that's where Islam spoke very harshly, that we don't use this type of information. We don't use astrology to actually begin the moon. This is inappropriate. So that's why there's a lot of emphasis in classical text, in the Quran, in the Hadith, about astrology, because it was misused. It was used in the inappropriate manner. The information, the knowledge was used inappropriately. And it wasn't common amongst the companions, amongst the Sahaba. There were very few people in the classical times who had knowledge of these things. So therefore, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, stated that, we just simply have a procedure. We look for the moon, we begin the month. If we don't see the moon, we continue the month 30 days. And that's why, to end this particular point, Imam Ibn Hajar, he himself says in Fathul Bari, quoting several different opinions about sumu li ru'yatihi, about sighting the moon, etc. He said, look, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, told those people who had the knowledge of astronomy that if that was a means to get certainty for sighting of the moon, then use that. And for those who don't have that ability and that certainty or the access to that knowledge, then in that case, we're not going to use that type of knowledge. We're just going to cite the moon.
Right. So you mentioned that the traditional scholars did not use those calculations to determine the beginning of the month. Was there an Islamic reasoning behind why they didn't do it? Was it something in Sharia? Or did they feel that doing so would actually go against, the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in any way?
So again, it goes back to the same point. There is reference in many classical texts about hisab, about calculations to determine the positions of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And the scholars have actually written that if someone has the hisab, has the calculations of the moon, and they believe it's certain for them, for that individual, it would be mandatory to start the month, but not on
Right.
others.
Right.
So classical scholars have written this.
Mm.
So it was used, but it wasn't as frequent. It wasn't on a common level. And now we come to our present age.
Right.
We find that this knowledge is accessible at the tip of our fingertips, right? Like we have it, we have access to it on our
Right.
phones. We use it for qibla, you know. First thing at a nikah or a wedding, it's time for salah. Oh, brother, let's see if you're actually facing the qibla, and they take out the technology, right? We want to figure out if it's time for prayer. We're using that technology, right? It's so accessible. We have so much certainty about it. We use it in different forms of our worship, and that's the call that is being made today, is that this knowledge is so accessible, it's so absolute, it's so certain, we could use it to determine the positions of the moon and to start the lunar months.
So when did we reach this conclusion? So you mentioned that classical scholars didn't use it. So when did we actually came to the conclusion that we can actually use these calculations to determine the beginning of the month?
So just like the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he would look at the sun to determine the prayer timings,
Correct.
right? And then over time, generation after generation, they started to figure out that we have a host of knowledge here, that we don't really need to see the sun to determine the positions of the sun for our prayer timings. And as an ummah collectively, generations ago, we use this information to determine the timings of the prayer. So in modern times, it's becoming more of a call, especially in North America and Europe, that we should use the calculations to also determine the beginning of the month.
Sounds good. So Sheikh Omar, can we do qiyas of prayer timings? Can we use analogy when it comes to prayer timings and say, well, because we use calculations and there's consensus of the ummah on using calculations to determine prayer timings, nobody disagrees with this. Can we do a qiyas of that one on moon sighting as well then?
Well, before I get into that point, I just wanted to basically add to the point that Sheikh Yusuf was mentioning, that if accessibility was pretty much the issue, we know for a fact that when it comes to the Madani Jews, they were using calculations not for astrology purposes, but for astronomical purposes, as Qadi has pointed out, which is why the Prophet ﷺ was making that statement. If there's khair, if there's goodness in a practice that is even adopted by our cousins in the Abrahamic faith, then there should be no issue in us taking that, such as the fast of Muharram. Right? When the Prophet ﷺ understood why the Jewish community, is fasting on this day, even though the Qurayshi community was already fasting on the 10th of Muharram. This is not a new thing that the Prophet ﷺ was exposed to, but the rationale behind it, when they're saying that this is the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had freed their people, and and Musa alayhi salatu wasalam had fasted on this day out of gratitude. فَصَامَهُ مُوسَى شُكْرًا فَنَحْنُ نَصُومُ. And the Prophet ﷺ is saying, نَحْنُ أَحَقُّ وَأَوْلَى بِمُوسَى مِنْكُمْ. Right? We have more connection, we have more rights over Musa alayhi salatu wasalam than you. And then he mandated the fasting of the 10th of Muharram for that 1 year, which later then was replaced by Ramadan. So if accessibility and also education on how to do these things is being made an issue, it shouldn't have been an issue for that community, because the Jewish community is right there. So that's why I'm seeing it particularly. And again, when it comes to the calculation of salah, although it primarily revolves around the sun, but we don't find the Prophet ﷺ explicitly saying that look at the sun and determine your prayer timings. Is more of look at the signs that are indicating to the position of the sun, whether it's shadows, whether it's what the reflection of the shadows are from the dunes, and so forth.
So there is some set of sighting though. It's actually determining based on the shadow.
Yes.
So you're not looking at the sun, but you're looking at the shadow, which is there because of the sun.
Exactly. The thing is that the Prophet ﷺ has left that open. He's not confined it.
Correct.
Whereas in the moon issue, he has confined it in multiple ahadith. So to answer the question that you had asked, I would say that qiyas is exercised in the absence of text, right? Then what we're doing in order to resolve this issue is that we're going to look for an illah, okay, going to be the common reason, and the hukam or the ruling that's associated with this illah, we're going to apply in the other place that we're trying to figure out. Here we don't need to do that unless we're doing it on a substantive basis, right? If we're doing it more for a supporting basis. But when nusus is there, when texts are there, for us to exercise qiyas over the explicit instructions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is where there's a lot of criticism as it is in certain fiqh positions, right? So the position that we take is that in the presence of clear texts from the Quran and the Hadith, there's no need for us to resort to qiyas. But if we had some confusion or there's ambiguity or whatnot, then yes, we should go ahead and exercise qiyas to come to a conclusion that would be more fitting for the ummah. So I wouldn't agree that qiyas is a legitimate approach on this issue when you have clear-cut text from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on this.
Yeah, so great points mentioned by Shaykh Omar. The fact of the matter is it's a matter of interpretation of the text. Does ru'ya literally mean to sight the moon? Or is the Prophet ﷺ referring to certainty?
Okay, so are you referring to the hadith لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Any hadith where it says to sight the moon with
Correct.
the words ru'ya, does it actually mean ru'ya? The Prophet ﷺ, a man came to him and said, I saw the moon. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings, what did he do? He looked for certainty. Who are you? Are you a believer? You saw it. So he was establishing certainty. And that's why the fuqaha say, there are some jurists, especially the Hanafi jurists, they say in order for the moon to be determined sighted, 5 people is not acceptable.
Right.
So 5 people come and see it, yet the Hanafi jurists are saying that sighting is not going to be acceptable on a clear day. You need jammul ghafir. So what are the fuqaha saying? It's certainty that's more important than actual sighting of the moon, because 5 people sighted it, yet it's being thrown away, and until we don't have, according to some scholars, 40, according to some Hanafi jurists, 70, according to some jurists, 200 people citing it, we're not going to take that citing. So what is meant by ra'a? It means certainty and knowledge. And we see this precedence in the Quran and in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala. Have you not seen? Allah is addressing you and I and all the viewers. Alam tara. Have you not seen? If we take the literal meaning, have you not seen the case of the people of the elephants? So we have not seen it. Allah knows that. God knows that we have not seen it because we've come so many years after. So Allah is saying it's so certain. Are you not certain about the people of the elephants and what happened to them? Right? So in the Sharia it's mentioned. So we're not denying the point that Shaykh Omar raised, that qiyas is only to be applied when we don't have clear source text. Yes, we have clear source text here, but is ru'ya number one maqsood? Is it an end goal? Is it the end objective? Or is fasting or starting the month the objective?
Right.
It's only a wasila, it's only a means. And as I said, there's a whole host of, in the Hanbali fiqh, one man sees it, one person sees it, you start the moon.
Right.
In Hanafi it's not allowed, jurisprudence is not allowed.
Right.
But if I may add to
Right,
that,
yeah.
one of the principles that we read in fiqh is that when it comes to words, they're going to be taken in their literal meaning unless there's going to be some reason for you to
Move
to the metaphorical, which we call qarinatu sarifa. So here the question will be asked, that what is a qarina sarifa in this particular instance, as to why we're moving from the literal to the metaphorical. The other thing is that when it comes to the words like alam tara, that we know that's for tashwiq, right? That's there to just try and gauge the interest of the audience that's being addressed, to get your attention. So it's a figure of speech that is known, that is exercised quite a bit in Arabic. But in terms of what's it called, the Hanafi approach, or let me comment on the hadith. The hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's trying to confirm the identity of this individual, not the sighting, right? Because the identity, the sighting is only going to be valid if it's going to be done by a mu'min. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is gauging this individual to confirm, is he a mu'min? He's not really confirming, did you really see it? How did you see it? Where did you see it? Those questions are not asked. How many people were with you when you saw it? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't ask these questions.
Isn't that understood though? Because that was the whole point of asking, right? Because if he's a believer, then whatever this person is going to say will be trusted.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the point I'm trying to make. So the Prophet ﷺ is not confirming whether he saw it or not. He's confirming whether he's a believer in order for him to, in order for the Prophet ﷺ to take his shahada, to take his testimony, and then run with it.
But that is to establish whether he's speaking the truth or not.
Well, we know that for a fact that when it comes to when it comes to shahada itself, one of the criterion is that you have to be a believer.
Right.
Right? What was it? وَلَا يَجْعَلُ اللَّهُ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ سَبِيلًا. So the thing is that the Prophet ﷺ is confirming this particular aspect, and then once that was confirmed, the Prophet ﷺ then accepted, yes, you saw it, and then he announced that to go ahead and fast.
Right.
Now, in terms of the application, which is, I believe, what Sheikh Yusuf is now referring to, different fuqaha have applied this hadith in different ways. So yes, there could be some doubt and there could be some shak, right, in a person whether he saw it or not. Like if it's a clear sky, how is it that he only saw it and no one else saw it? And then there's all this different ijtihad, which is not, I mean, Sheikh Yusuf just said quite a few numbers, 10, 40, 200. People are going to come up with different criterion based on different mindsets, different ideologies. But it doesn't take away from the actual fact that did they sight it with their eyes or not? Because it's just a matter, it's to confirm the sighting, not to confirm the presence of the moon. It's to confirm whether the sighting was accurate or not.
Right.
So that's the way I'm seeing it.
So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. So over here, shahada, are we saying that it can only be established through ru'ya? Or is it just certainty that once you have entered the month,
and that's a very important point you bring here. If you study the Quran, nowhere in the Quran does it say to sight the moon. Nowhere in the Quran. In fact, when Allah speaks about fasting in Ramadan, the verse that you quoted, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ, the one who is present. Shahida literally means who is present. Right? So from this, we also understand that ru'ya does not have to mean to sight the moon. And here's another addition to this. We're talking about literal text earlier. The Prophet ﷺ said, the day of fasting, يَوْمَ تَصُومُونَ, is the day that you all fast. So priority is not necessarily sighting the moon, and especially in the context that I'm discussing it, and we are discussing it here. In North America, we have at least 7 hilal sighting committees, moon sighting committees. One sees it, the other one denies it. One says, no, it's not our aqidah. The people of our aqidah didn't see it, so we're not going to commence. And there's chaos. And within Toronto, let's leave alone any other city in North America, within Toronto, you have 10 masjids or 5 masjids within a radius, and they're all, not united in beginning or concluding the month of Ramadan. So the priority, the Prophet ﷺ, in this narration, he's saying the day of fasting is the day everybody fasts. So what we're learning from here is the sighting of the moon should not be something that we are so hung upon that creates all this chaos, whereas we have genuine classical text of fuqaha and jurists who's saying that ru'ya is not the end goal. To sight the moon is not the end goal. The certainty is the end goal. And that's why we have these jurists who are debating in terms of the application. How are we going to determine the moon was actually sighted?
So Sheikh, how have the scholars of the past understood the hadith that's both in Bukhari and Muslim, muttafaqun alayh, where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi, and he uses, which basically means all of you fast through the sighting it,
yeah.
meaning the moon, and break your fast, meaning the month is completed by sighting the moon. So again, in this instance, Rasulullah ﷺ is speaking to the entire ummah,
Yes.
and then he connects it to ru'ya.
Yes.
So how do we reconcile between
So-
this hadith and the point that you just made right now?
So exactly what we said earlier. So yes, we can take the literal meaning here to sight the moon, or we can take the metaphorical meaning until it's certain that the moon is sightable. So we're not talking, the moon will exist. When we talk about calculated moon sighting, we're not talking about whether the moon is born or not. Calculated sighting does not refer to the birth of the moon. What it's referring to is it sightable according to calculations, right?
Right.
So here, ru'ya, the sighting, can refer to certainty, right? And the deen is easy. The deen is simple, right? The religion is simple. Those who have access to the knowledge, they're aware of the knowledge, they know how to use the knowledge. For them, they can use the calculated moon sighting and determine the beginning of the month, right? These very same moon sighting committees, all of these scholars who are citing the moon, they accept calculations to deny a sighting, to reject a sighting. In fact, there are instances where people have come forward to these committees and said, we've sighted the moon. And they said, no, we're not going to accept your sighting without even questioning, because according to Khalid Shawkat's moon map, calculated moon map, it's not sightable.
Right.
So that sighting is thrown out. So they're already using the calculations to make a decision about moon sighting, to reject a sighting. But when it comes to establishing the sighting, they don't accept it. So if you're already using calculations to deny a sighting, why not accept it to accept the sighting?
Yeah, so a big question that is raised is that if you follow calculations, then you don't follow the sunnah of actually going out and sighting the moon. So what would you say to that?
There's nothing wrong in having calculated moon sighting. So even though the calculations has determined that it's sightable on this day, a believer can still go out and practice the sunnah. And when the Prophet ﷺ would see the moon, he would recite the dua, Allahumma ahillahu alayna bil yumni wal iman. Allow this new moon to come to us in a state that we are positive with faith, etc. Rabbi wa rabbuka Allah. He would address the moon and he would say, my Lord and your Lord is Allah. So we could still practice the sunnah.
Right. There's no contradiction.
There's no contradiction. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't use all the technology we use today, right? The end goal in many of these things is just, these are just means
That Allah has given us.
that he and we adopt them, we use them, right? To determine qibla, we use a compass, we use our apps, right? To determine our prayer timings, we use the technology, right? Even though the Prophet ﷺ didn't do it that way.
Right. Shaykh Omar,
Well,
would you like to say anything to
what
that?
I would say is, like, Sheikh Yusuf is right when he says, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. There, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that whoever is present in the month, you'll fast, right? There, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not making reference as to how you enter the month, but the comment that, nowhere in the Quran does it mention that you have to sight the moon. That's accurate. But when it comes to the hadith, this hadith is actually mutawatir, which would be put at the same level of the Quran, because there's 11 different narrations. There's 22 different narrations recorded by 11 different Sahaba, which qualifies now for tawatur because it's above the 10 mark, and therefore it's going to be at the same level of Quran in terms of its decisiveness, in terms of it being qat'i. So therefore, it is a very important text that we can't just overlook. And therefore, it's important for us to try and be as true to the word as possible, as exercised by the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in and the subsequent generations. When it comes to the moon being sightable, that's I understand that's one of the objectives of calculation. However, that's not something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had directed us to, because he told us فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ ثَلَاثِينَ. Right? If غُمَّ عَلَيْكُم means it's there, it's in the sky, but it's obscured to you, and in the event of obscurity, this is going to be your thing, your plan. You're going to go ahead and just complete the month as 30, regardless of it being there or not. Yes, we want unity. So when it comes to the comment about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying "Sawmukum yawma tusumun," that is in the context, as Imam Abu Dawud rahmatullah has put it in Sunan, if the community has made a mistake. Right? إِذَا أَخْطَأَ الْقَوْمُ الْهِلَالِ. That's the chapter title he's put there. Because human error will happen. As humans, we're prone to error. But what is going to be the backup plan if the error has occurred? Well, here, صَوْمُكُمْ يَوْمَ تُصُومُونَ. Right? I mean, just go ahead with it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will overlook these genuine mistakes that we have made.
But doesn't calculation erase that possibility of making that mistake?
Not necessarily, because again, you're calculating. This is based on takhweem for what's it called, a large part, right? It's still an estimation.
Which means, guesstimation.
Yeah, guess it. It's still an estimation or guesstimation at the end of the day. But the thing is that when you already have directive from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when we already understand that this is a legitimate path to go down and there's going to be no shari'i repercussions, then there should be nothing for us to worry about. Yes, when it comes to the Hilal committees using calculations for the denial of a sighting, we know from experience, and both of us, we were there in one instance when we were both part of the Hilal committee, that despite the calculations saying no, you can't cite it, sightings have been accepted, and they continue to do so in previous years as well. The only time that the local Hilal committees are using the calculations to deny the sighting is primarily, I'm not going to be political about this, it's primarily about Saudi. Because the Saudi sightings have always been controversial. Only because what's happened is they're citing it, but no one in that region is citing it. No one in Europe is citing it. And then we're not even citing it. So how is it that they all of a sudden cited it and no one else?
No, but this past Ramadan is a good example where there were countries around Saudi that cited it. It wasn't just Saudi Arabia, which basically, at least to the question, which is, what is the criteria for moonsighting?
But we didn't have an issue at that day because we all pretty much celebrated Ramadan on the same day.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no issue because when it is citable, and that's one of the criterions that these local Hilal committees have stipulated, that if surrounding regions are citing it, then there's no need for us, and there's no reason for us to reject those sightings, especially when it comes to Saudi sightings. But if it's only Saudi and no one else is seeing it, then obviously it raises a lot of questions, and there's been a lot of criticism, as we know, about the legitimacy of those sightings and what they're based on and so forth. So here, primarily when it comes to the using the calculations to reject the sightings, from even though this is not publicly said, but I'm saying this here for the clarity of the community, it's more about Saudi and the controversial Saudi sightings that they claim to make. But on the local level though, right, there are instances, and there continue to be instances, where sighting has happened, the calculations are saying no, but the shahada of the believer is far more greater than what some computer is telling us that this is going to be citable or not citable. So those are perspectives I wanted to add to.
Right. So basically tying into this whole conversation is the criteria for establishing it. So for instance, you have all these. So you mentioned Saudi as an example, but then we see that there are different bodies that have been put in place by the governments of different countries. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, every country has their own observational body that determines. And we've seen that a lot of times there will be several organizations that will come up and testify, and it's at a state level, it is actually accepted as a legitimate testimony. But then you have, based on basis of calculations, they say, well, there is no possibility of sighting this moon, and so they reject the human testimony, right, of people, and these organizations are basically basing off their judgment off of. So in that case, what's the criteria? Like, how can we determine, if their testimony is accepted or not? Because we study one of the principles in our fiqh is that anna hukm al-hakim yarfa al-khilaf. The judgment of the ruler overrides the differences.
يرفع الخلاف على المحكوم. But we're not the mahkum, right? In this, the mahkum are the local population.
But then we're using their judgment, though. We're using their testimony, or we're rejecting it. We're saying that's not right, though.
And the thing is that we're under no obligation to accept that hukum because they're not our governors. And especially when it comes to
But we are taking their testimony, though. We are saying, like, a big chunk of Muslim community in North America, they take the test. So people who follow global sighting, for instance, they will take the testimony of these countries, not just Saudi Arabia, but also UAE. You have Jordan, you have, Egypt, you have all these African countries.
correct. So
Somalia stuff.
they are taking it
And
in those instances. Look, let's talk about the application right now. When we started our journey here in Toronto, before Sheikh Yusuf and I were even born, the first thing that people were doing locally was following Saudi. Right? This Hilal committee came a bit. This Hilal committee is the second edition now, right? Where local Indo-Pak scholars are going to get together and they're going to establish this committee. But prior to that, following Saudi was the norm. It was the norm back in England when I was there, when I was studying. The whole country was following Saudi back in those days. And then there was a small minority that was following Morocco. And then after that, they started going down the same path that we've gone down here, that we should do our local sighting and so forth. So Saudi, because obviously it's home to the Holy Lands, people have this emotional attachment to it. And therefore, even though it's not a fiqh attachment, it's an emotional attachment, people look at it as the standard. They said it, okay, let's follow it because it's the home of our Holy Lands. So when it comes
is that
to
a legitimate opinion, though, in any of the madahib?
to follow Saudi particularly, I haven't seen it. Wallahu alam.
There is Mufti Khalid Saifullah has given fatwa that, you can follow it. All the Darul Ulooms where Sheikh studied, all the Islamic institutions, many of the ulama here in Toronto who studied in the UK, all the Darul Ulooms, they follow Saudi Arabia.
Really?
In the UK, entire UK, they follow. So it's legitimate to some scholars,
Right.
but to others it's not. And that's the problem with this whole moon sighting issue. It's become such a chaos
Right.
that people are losing trust with our imams and with our scholars, and this is a viable option. The moon sighting calculation is a viable option that'll bring unity, that'll bring ease, that'll solve all these chaotic problems, and it'll bring harmony within the community. So, and it's not an unknown opinion. You have a madhab, Shafi'i madhab, where there are reliable classical scholars who say it's fine. In fact, I've been studying and researching even Hanafi position. There's text I sent you one a while back from Bahrul Ra'iq, where it says that as long as the hisab is not to do with astrology, you can use it to determine ahillah. We spoke about the eclipse. Which one of these moon sighting, and let's go back. I don't want to put anything negative on Shaykh Omar. The word is literally there that when you see the eclipse, إِذَا رَأَى, when you see the eclipse. I'm going to ask Shaykh Omar. I'm going to ask every other imam that the eclipse.
He's asking you.
The eclipse prayer, did you actually go see the eclipse, or you announced it from before saying eclipse prayer is at this time? So, it's a matter of pick and choose here, right? You're literally following one. There's a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't repeat the prayer in the same masjid. It's very clear. Yet every masjid has 2 Jummahs, 3 Jummahs, 4 Jummahs. There's a clear text. Yet we're not using it. We're actually, if we look at the apparent, we're actually just throwing away. But there's a context that we have to almost oppose that narration with the limitations we have here, etc. And that's the beauty of jurisprudence and fiqh. We don't take the literal meaning. The Hanafi fiqh is known for this, that we look at the spirit of the hadith. Does ru'ya here actually mean ru'ya? Is it the end goal of everything? That I'll drop everything just to look for the moon and not bother about the chaos in the community? Not bother about one masjid 10 meters away is doing it on another day, and not bother about this because I'm so hung about looking at that moon.
Right.
So the fiqh allows facilitation within the framework. We're not saying get out of the framework, right? In the Hanafi position, if a wife can't find her husband, Hanafi position is wait 120 years? Yeah. Is that what it is? We go to the Maliki fiqh. Wait a few years, and if he's unknown,
4 years, yeah,
right, 4 years. If he can't be found, or he's just a ghaib, she can apply for her fasq, right? So we can take, even for those followers who are rigid on the Hanafi position, we can take from another madhab for a common benefit.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to emphasize
Right.
here.
So Sheikh Omar, I know you've spoken a lot about. I just want to get one answer from you. So Sheikh Yusuf is very clear on the fact that ru'ya in the hadith does not literally mean sighting the moon in every instance. I mean, in certain instances, yes, but generally the spirit behind ru'ya is establishing certainty, and it's not just seeing the moon. Do you agree with that? Yes or no? Or you have a more just a yes or no answer. Do you agree with this?
I don't agree with
Okay. Okay.
But when it comes to the Saudi thing, as we were saying, that Sheikh Yusuf is correct, that yes, all the madaris are following it, or some were following it. But we need to ask, what became the issue? Why all of a sudden this dissension?
Right.
Why all of a sudden we're moving away from Saudi? Well, it's only because of the questionability of those sightings. Right? People are now, they're losing trust. People have access to that very information. Right? We're talking about calculations and so forth, which we're using, and now we're second thinking that, is this something that we can rely on or not? So the trust factor started to go down, due to which these alternative committees were born, and as a result trying to solve the issue themselves.
Did it make it worse though?
Of course it did. And this is where I also go to the point of calculations. I disagree that calculations is going to bring unity. If anything, look, we're sitting here. We're not united. Okay? It's not going to bring unity no matter what position we adopt, only because of the cultural diversity that we have and the different mindsets that we have, and in the absence of a central authority. There is no method that's going to bring unity. That's just the way I see it.
Yeah, I'll add on this. The calculated sighting is already bringing unity. Let's just look at North America. As I said in the previous podcast, is that at least 80%, the last count of masajid are already following calculated moon sighting. All the moon sightings committees are already following calculations to deny sightings. So we're getting there. We're getting there. But it will bring unity. Majority of the youth, we are living.
I have to clarify.
Yeah.
When you say calculations, doesn't mean local sighting. It means global sighting. It's just
correct.
A calculation is just establishing the possibility of the moon.
The sighting possibility. It's not about the
being
birth.
able to
It's
be
not
sighted.
about the birth.
It's not about the birth.
Yeah, it's about the sighting
That's
possibility.
a very important question.
And to add here about the Saudi, we're talking about global sighting. When Saudi declares it, even if it's against the calculated moon sighting, position, when Saudi cites it, all the surrounding Darul Iftas, all the surrounding, Mahkama Ulya al-Shari'iyya, which is legitimate Islamic jurisprudent bodies, are coming on TV, national TV, and declaring, we have accepted the sighting of Saudi. Why? Because number one is majority of the Saudi, they follow the Hanbali fiqh, right? And according to Hanbali fiqh, one man sees that moon, it's done. It's started. The month has started. So all the nearby, Egypt, Jordan, UAE, all these Muslim countries, their Darul Iftas, their muftis, their scholars have accepted that sighting. And they don't follow calculations. Right. They follow sighting. They have accepted it. Yet here in North America, these organizations who claim to say they follow sighting, they reject that sighting because of the calculated moon sighting. So you're neither citing it properly, you're neither following the calculations properly.
Right.
And that's why this method that I'm emphasizing, and many other scholars in North America are, to stop all of this chaos and misunderstanding, it's let's come to that. And again, we're not rejecting the hadith. We're not rejecting, just like we've moved away from citing the sun for our prayers, just like we moved away from looking at shadows and so many other things in modern time. We can move away from the literal context without rejecting the hadith,
right,
and still starting our acts of worship.
So Sheikh Omar, based on the point that you just raised right now, which is the reason why people moved away from Saudi sighting is because of a lack of trust. Well, the whole point is hukm al-hakim. It actually removes that ikhtilaf that exists. It removes that differences that exist. So why, at what point do we say that a common man is morally responsible for this? Because if the government actually makes a decision, even though it might be quote unquote wrong, I mean, isn't the obligation lifted off of the shoulders of the common man though? So why do we have this lack of trust, and what we have seen is, and you acknowledge this, it has created more differences. So I mean, really, was it worth it? Was it needed?
Well, as I said before, the common man is going to follow the ruling of their governance, right? Of their governors. And when it comes to people outside of that governance, they're at liberties to scrutinize what the hakim is saying or is not saying. Well, the thing is that...
I mean, we're following their opinion.
No, we're not following... Sorry, I don't understand. I mean, we're following their opinion.
I mean, we are following whatever ruling they come up with. If you're following the sighting of Saudi as an example, if they say the moon has been sighted, then the hukum that applies to the mahkum, the people, the subjects there, will also apply to people who are following that opinion outside. Why would it change?
But the thing is, the obligation to follow that opinion does not exist upon the people who are outside of those borders. So
what if they've taken on that opinion?
Sorry?
What if they've taken on that opinion?
No, that's completely discretionary. In these areas where we have no central authority, it is really left to the discretion of the common man what they want to follow, which is now what is being said at this moment to the common person, that you follow your local masjid or you follow whatever committee suits you. It's left to the discretion. We're not going to have any unified view anytime soon. So, like for example, we're talking about the 80% of the masajid. I would really question those numbers only because if you look at the thing, like say for example, my city in Brampton, there's 22 masajid and there's not a single one that's following calculation. Everyone is following small numbers either following Saudi or they're all part of the Hilal Council or Hilal Committee. But there's not a single masjid that's following.
He's giving North American figures, I think.
Yeah,
right, so,
I can understand. And the one thing that we also have to realize about the North American dynamics, the largest concentration of the Muslim community is primarily found in the GTA, in the Toronto area. Yeah, I'm not sure about now in recent times when it comes to Texas, a lot of people are moving there.
Maybe Chicago and other places.
But Chicago doesn't even fare compared to Toronto. So GTA has the largest concentration, right, out of all of North America. So, to basically use minority communities as a standard to dictate a new standard to a majority community, I would find that somewhat problematic.
But we're taking the holistic approach. We're not taking individual communities, though.
Even in the GTA, let's just look at the GTA.
Yeah.
There are a number of mainstream large organizations who have adopted the calculations. You look at ISNA, you look at Islamic Institute of Toronto, Islamic Foundation of Toronto. These are huge organizations, right? With thousands of followers. MAC. You look at MAC. They have a number of mosques across Canada, including here in Toronto. So these are large bodies. We're not determining on small pockets and small musallas here and there in the GTA. I'm talking about major Muslim organizations.
Right.
And a lot of the common folk, they're not bothered about a small mosque. They say, okay, what has ISNA announced? What has the Fiqh Council of North America announced? And these are organizations that follow calculations, right? A majority of the youth that I speak to, they live a schedule-based society, in a schedule-based society, right? They have exams, they have surgeries, they have appointments, and they're not going to wait 12 midnight for a decision to come from California for Toronto. We are in EST, they're in PST, right? Usually that's what's happening, and the community is not prepared.
Can maslaha, the communal benefit, actually outweigh or rule over a text when you have the prophetic, the other side that takes Ruyah literally and actually means actually sight the moon? So can maslaha overwrite that?
Of course. So when there's situations that are mujtahad fi, they're mukhtalaf fi, there are different views about them, especially about what we just said. In order to establish Ruyah, you have a whole diverse, you have from one person allowing to be seen the moon, which would be acceptable, to 200 on another side. And you have a whole spectrum. then yes, for sure, for a maslaha, and the maslaha which we're talking about here is unity of our communities. It's becoming so bad where people are saying, forget about these Maulwis, forget about these Imams, etc. I'm going to do it myself, right? I know of so many people within Toronto. Their masjid and their Imam follows the Hilal Council. They follow the moonsighting, but they've already, even before the announcement comes out, they said, "Oh, Saudi has seen it. This organization has announced it, so I'm doing it." And they're already fasting, or they're already starting their Eid preparations, right? So they're not waiting for it, because technology everywhere, it's right there, right? So this maslaha is that we're going to bring unity, we're going to bring ease on the community, and it's going to stop all of this chaos.
Right. So, yeah, Sheikh Omar, you want to say something to that?
No, my question would be like, at what point, right? At what point is public opinion going to be taken into consideration in order
Is
to...
that public opinion or public benefit?
No, I'm talking about opinion, because based on what we're hearing...
But I think he's talking about public benefit, not opinion.
So number one, we think the moonsighting issue is huge. We think it's about fard and sunnah.
It is, right? About fasting.
It's not fard. Fasting is fard.
Right. But it's based on something.
So what I mean is that it's not a big issue. Why? Because if it was so big, there would be so much unity amongst the fuqaha, amongst the jurists. But we have such a diversity amongst the fuqaha and the jurists. There are jurists who have written, our own jurists who we all look up to have written, if a person individually sees the moon, they can start fasting. In fact, some jurists have written it's fard for him to start the fasting month, even though his hakim, even though his ruler has decided or makes the announcement that no, it's not seen, because it's applicable to him. So when you have this diversity, that means it's not a main issue. The main issue is, when are we starting the month? When are we going to fast? Do I need to start fasting or not? Right? So Ruyah is only a wasila. It's only a means to get there. It's not the end objective. It's not the end goal. Right?
Right.
And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, and referring to Imam Abu Dawood's narration that Shaykh Omar gave reference to earlier, that even if there's a mistake in the way you did it, the day of fasting is the day that everybody fasts. This proves that sighting the moon properly is not the end goal.
Okay.
The end goal is, let's start the month with unity.
So that's what I was talking about. Here, it's what I'm hearing. It's more of the public reaction, or public even opinion, and public way of viewing how they want to go about determining this holy month, that is steering us in this direction. And this is what I'm going to ask, that at what point, how many opinions have to be there in order for us to now go away from one tradition and adopt another tradition in the name of maslaha? Because the thing is, I feel that this is very regional based. If that's probably the reality, what Sheikh Yusuf is saying is probably the reality in his area. But I can say with certainty it's not the reality in our area. Like, we don't see this in at least in our city, this type of commotion and so forth. Because what you find is, in our city, the community is quite calm and they just go ahead and follow what the imams are saying. But one of the things is that there's a lot of discourse and there's a lot of education on this from our behalf, due to which we don't see the type of fighting and so forth which Sheikh Yusuf is making reference to. So I think, in my opinion, rather than going ahead and shifting from a traditional position to I would say a more nuanced position, or a newer position, maybe education, from the community imams would go a long way in trying to bring calm and stability within the community. Wallahu alam. I'm just suggesting that because I'm not seeing it in our city.
Right.
Right. And the thing is, when it comes to our city in Brampton, it's expanded tremendously, but you don't see that type of dissension and so forth. That is not in the imams, not in the community. The imams all get together, and we all basically are working together on many things. So, wallahu alam, I think it's more of a regional thing than a North American thing.
Okay, sounds good. So, we're talking about just the criteria that's used for moon sighting. So I know we touched a little bit about Saudi, but for instance, there have been instances where, the moon was actually sighted in California. So I know Sheikh Yusuf, we talked about 3-hour difference and stuff, but then that sighting was not accepted by the other bodies within North America. So in that case, you just wonder, you're like, okay, well, what's up with this? Like, where do you draw the lines?
The only instance I can recall is when it was past the midnight mark. So these bodies do have a cutoff time. So 12 o'clock midnight is typically the cutoff. And they wait until then if they need to. It's really discretionary. I'm not going to say it's really based on fiqh. It's really based on discretion. And again, it's based on basically making it easy for the community. That's definitely there. We're not going to sugarcoat that. So when you have a sighting that's coming in 12:30, 1 o'clock, and everyone's pretty much gone to sleep, and the committee has already decided, that's the only time when those particular sightings have been disregarded. But if it's within the time that has been allocated, I don't recall of an instance where they're going to reject it. They will go ahead, they will engage. This is what typically happens. When a sighting comes in, the people here are going to get in contact with the local community there. And then they're going to gauge, okay, what's the reaction of this community? Has the entire community accepted it? Or has it been only, accepted by one community? Or is it just on social media and no community has gone ahead and cited it? Because we had those issues as well, that someone said we cited it, put on social media, but the local where it was cited, those people were not even accepting this and they had reservations. So there's a lot of work that's going on in terms of communication and just establishing the legitimacy of that particular claim before going ahead and announcing anything. So that's the only instance, going back to your question, that if there was a sighting after the cutoff time, typically that's been disregarded. But if it's within the time, it will be entertained, it will be looked into, and if the confidence is there, which is typically established by the local community, that they themselves have accepted it, we have contact with them, we have verified it, then it will be announced, regardless of what the calculations are saying.
So let's say the moon is sighted here in Toronto, as an example, at 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
In China, it's 8 a.m. next day. So if you follow global sighting, then in that case, people of China should be fasting as well then, because it's the same day.
Well, it's a good point that you brought up. When we're saying global sighting, we're talking about our region alone. That what criterion are we going to adopt in order to determine the next month? We are not claiming that this is a method that is going to be applicable on the entire world. For each community, their own criterion. The best solution would be to have a central authority that decides all of this, and all of this ikhtilaf would be done. You'd have to honor the authority. We just don't have that here, and we're not going to have that for the foreseeable future. That's just a reality, right? Let's be real about that. So
Quite
the thing is,
but yeah.
I'm totally pessimistic, 100% pessimistic. It's just not going to happen.
Sheikh Yusuf, are you pessimistic as well, or a bit optimistic?
I think we can head to a unified solution to many of the issues. Maybe
Right.
not as a central authority, as a Khalifa here, but I think the coming generations will form better unity than the previous.
Right. So,
But let me just clarify that point. The thing is that when we're saying global sighting, we're talking about what we are going to adopt.
when you say who draws those boundaries?
Okay,
You don't live far from each other, but I mean, your community is very different from his community, apparently. So, who establishes we?
So we is going to be the local community. And when we say local, that's going to be based on the different organizations that have banded together and formed their committee. That's what we is going to apply. So before it was the Hilal Committee, right?
Okay.
So Hilal Committee would be all those organizations that are under this umbrella, we is applicable to them. And anyone that's gone ahead and formed other committees, that's their we.
Right.
So when we say we, we're talking about the committees that have been formed and the organizations that are part of it.
See what it is, what we're looking at, the reality. Let's look at reality. Hilal Committee is left with about 4 or 5 organizations. And the Hilal Council has about 25 mosques. And GTA has 200 places of prayer, permanent places of prayer. Where are the rest? They're either following Saudi or they're following calculations, right? So again, the point is that, how practical, especially with all these guidelines. Yeah, you have global sighting. Both committees, Hilal Committee as well as Hilal Council, they both say they follow global sighting to some degree. They don't follow local sighting because they go all the way to Caribbean. That can't be local. But their criteria is different. You have others who say, look, they both say they're global, but then Saudi is not considered in the global world for them. UAE is not considered global, especially if it goes against the calculations, right? So again, they're neither doing the Ruyah properly, the sighting properly, the way the Sharia demands it and the Fuqaha have demanded it, and neither are they following the calculations properly. They're doing something like we would say a kachumba, right? Like a salad, right?
So, Sheikh, bringing it to a close, what's the practical solution? I mean, a lot of times you hear everybody saying, oh, follow your local masjid, but then you can be living at a place where there are 10 masjids in your vicinity and everyone's following a different opinion with so many committees out there. So what we find, unfortunately in North America is that you have one family, and within the same family, you have the father is celebrating Eid on one day, the mother is celebrating on another day. The whole family is split, siblings are split. So what's the way forward? What's the solution?
Well, I suggest two things. Number one, if there is a difference in the family should get together and do mashwara, right? They should consult as to what is going to be the best method for that that family particularly to adopt for this Ramadan and all coming Ramadans. If we're talking about unity in the community, unity begins in the family. And if we can't establish that, then we're in no position to go and criticize the ummah that we're not united. So this is going to be an opportunity that if there is such dissension in the family, get together and work out a solution. And I'm sure something can be worked out in most cases, if not all cases. And when it comes on a communal level, these differences are here to stay for the foreseeable future. The one thing that we should do is at least respect each other's opinions, right? I may be opposed to Shaykh Yusuf's opinion, and I'm very open about it. I don't agree with his view, but I have still deep respect for him, right? We are still working together. As we saw in this podcast,
yes.
In this podcast, we didn't have to take out these gloves, okay, and start punching each other.
No, you took it out. You took it out.
For display purposes. It's a prop.
I'll take a couple of shots.
It's a prop.
For unity,
right? And this is not Jake Paul versus Tyson. It's nothing of that nature. We're basically still the best of friends, and despite our differences in opinions, we can still work together on many other fronts. So, and even in Mathabah, it's the same thing, right? There's going to be issues that he's going to be passionate about that I'm against, but we'll find a way to work together. So the way I see it is that respect the differences. Differences will always be there, and just accept that that's his view, this is my view, I'm going to follow this, he's going to follow that, and let people be, right? Live and let live.
Before I get to you, Sheikh Yusuf, a question on that one. So when you're at workplace and then you're working, at a place where they're predominantly non-Muslims and they're really confused that, they're different Muslim employees, one set of Muslims are celebrating Eid on one day and then the other set of Muslims are celebrating Eid on the second day. So this whole idea, it feels like it's, how Shaykh Salamullah says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he united the ummah, but he split the moon, and we have split the ummah on the basis of moon. So, it's
and it comes communication.
Off, it even comes off in a very negative way.
No, the thing is, it's all about communication. I've had workshops with the different companies, and the employers are coming there, and you explain these things to them. And the thing is that typically employees are not speaking with their supers, they're not speaking to the employers, only because they think that, what are these non-Muslims going to say? How are they going to perceive us? Oh, we're so disunited and we're not the same when it comes to Christmas. There's only one Christmas. There should be only one Eid. But when I personally have spoke to them and educated them on this, the one comment that I've gotten so often is that, why do our employees not tell us these things? So the thing is that for some reason we have established these invisible walls. We're afraid to communicate inside the company, but we're bold to complain outside the company. So my message to those people is, speak to your supervisors, speak to HR, speak to whoever it is that you are supposed to report to, and let them know this. Like Maple Leaf, in HMA we deal with major companies, major corporations. And with Maple Leaf the other day, when I was there just 1 week before Eid, they were telling us that, yeah, they're ready, that Eid could either be on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and they're going to take the steps, right, based on their Muslim employees, which all of them are from the South Asian community, and following these, moonsighting method. They said that we're going to shut down the operation based on whatever is going to be announced, knowing that it's going to be a day before. But they're ready to go down that route because it was clearly communicated to them. So that's all it is. Communication is going to solve all of these issues that we're making when they're really not that major of an issue.
Right. Sheikh Yusuf.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Shaykh Omar. Education is very important. In terms of an individual, usually individuals, even if they have many masajid in their regions, they're performing salah for the most part in one masjid. So I would say follow that masjid that they usually perform the prayers in. If they don't, and they pray in all of them, then whichever opinion it's gonna be valid. All of these opinions, moonsighting, calculations, following Saudi, all of them are acceptable. The jurists, we have legitimate jurists and scholars who are saying they're all acceptable. We make it a big issue, but the reality is not a big issue.
But
There's
you tell
nothing
people
wrong.
to follow like one opinion though, whichever opinion they follow, they should stick with it.
Yeah, of course. So like, if someone comes to me and says, which day should I celebrate Eid? That masjid has already announced it. This masjid, we're waiting till midnight, probably. So I would ask that, which masjid do you usually pray at? And if they say I pray at this one, okay, follow their verdict, right? So they're following a legitimate opinion. If they have a little bit more knowledge and they know about the insights of how moonsighting works, etc., then you leave it up to the individual.
But Sheikh, the differences have to end, right? Because, I mean, for me, what really baffles my mind is that the whole purpose of having the calendar that was introduced by Umar radiallahu anhu was so that transactions can take place and people can have. So, for instance, if I say, if I borrow money from someone, let's say $50,000, right? And I say I'm going to pay that person back on the 15th of Dhul Hijjah, and then the person comes to me on, let's say for that person it's on Thursday, and I'm like, no, for me it's Friday. It's gonna be, I'll be like, well, I said 15th of Dhul Hijjah, but it's not today for me. It's gonna be Friday.
But I
mean,
don't think,
it doesn't break apart.
I don't think that's a valid argument at all.
Why not?
Only because for transaction purposes, we've already moved to the Gregorian calendar.
No, but
one
it's
uses
Islamic
that.
from the spirit though, from the spirit. I mean, in Saudi,
You have to understand the urf. In our urf, no one follows the lunar calendar for any transactional purposes. We're all following the Gregorian calendar. We're only following the lunar calendar for devotional practices. That's it. That's the urf that's been established. So this argument that is being brought, I would say it's a non-argument.
Yeah, the point you're making is the differences should end.
Yeah.
No doubt. And I think the organizations and the masajid are working towards
Because
it.
in one place, I mean, it's not about, some people make this argument, where does it say in Islam we have to celebrate Eid on the same day? Well, it's not just about Eid. It's about having the first of Shawwal on the same day in the same place. You can't say, oh, today is first of Shawwal for me, but it's 29th of, Ramadan for you. Like, it's in the same place. It doesn't work. It's like saying today is 15th of March for me and then, 16th of March for you as an example, right? It's like, how does that work? The whole point of having the calendar is actually thrown off. Like, it just goes against the spirit of having...
We're getting there. We're getting there slowly. But, until we don't get there, we have to respect one another.
Right.
And as...
By the way, it's not March. I mean, it's just a random example. Yeah.
Yes, no problem.
Alhamdulillah. Any final thoughts? Any final comments?
Well, I hope this podcast has served as hopefully a good orientation on how differences should be discussed, as opposed to being at each other's throats, shouting over one another, and making a whole scene, a whole drama, which has become the norm on social media. I think this approach should be adopted, where you talk about your differences respectfully, agree to disagree on certain points, but always end off at a good note with a handshake, right?
Yeah, of course.
And that's it. Alhamdulillah. Move on in life, right?
Alhamdulillah. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Their differences will occur. Imam Abu Hanifa, his own students, the star students, Abu Yusuf and Muhammad al-Shaybani, rahimahullah, they differed. but they respected one another. So this is an example from our legacy that until we don't have uniformity in some of these major issues, we need to respect one another. And it's fine. It's fine. You know, Medina and Syria, they celebrated Ramadan and Eid on different days at the time of the Sahaba, the greatest generations. So for sure, you know, if two families, I know what you're referring to. Sometimes in Scarborough, it's one day of Eid, and in Mississauga, it's another day. And this is in-laws, or these are brothers and sisters. And that's what you were referring to earlier. So just respect it, you know. I know some, people, congregants in my masjid, they face this dilemma. And I tell them that, you know what, if it's their day of Eid, go visit them. Even if you're not celebrating it, go visit them and show that you still love them, respect them, and you're there, even though you might be fasting.
Right.
Right? That's fine until we don't come to that uniformity.
Right.
So if we learn to respect, and especially based on knowledge, not on emotions, right? There are valid differences of opinion. If we have the knowledge, we'll learn to respect one another.
Right.
Right? Sheikh Abdullah Kapodrui, rahimahullah, he was a great scholar that we used to always connect with during these challenging times. And he said, look, when a person has more deeper knowledge in issues, they will learn to respect the other opinion. When a person is limited with their own knowledge and their own view, and they're not exposed to the knowledge of the other side, then they become rigid and they look down upon the other and they harbor ill feelings of the other. And here's an example where Shaykh Omar might have a different view on something. I may have a different view, but it's based in legitimate knowledge and fiqh, jurisprudence. So we respect one another.
But I noticed one thing, Shaykh Omar didn't shake hands with me. But, you know, I don't take it personally. But
I think that's where we should conclude.
Exactly.
Hold on. He's getting his...
he's getting ready. So, viewers, thank you so much for joining in as you heard both opinions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless every single one of you. May Allah bless our shuyukh. Again, remember, these scholars are out there to serve the community, and they're trying their best to go back to the sources and making sure that it's presented in a way that it's something that's, we're true to our tradition, and it's something that the entire ummah can follow with great spirit so they can get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not out there to divide the ummah, They have equal love and they have equal concern. If anything, I mean, these scholars have more concern. This whole idea that scholars are always fighting, it's not true. They're actually trying their best to unite the ummah. But, as Shaykh Omar mentioned, and Shaykh Yusuf also alluded to it, the differences will exist. And we have to learn how to stay together despite these differences. Because remember, at the end of the day, we are the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We recite the same kalima. We have same Allah. We have the same messenger. We face the same qibla. And inshallah, we hope that on the day of resurrection, we are all united under the banner of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. With that, please subscribe to our channel and wait for the next podcast.